The explosion threw Cole against the wall of the transport ship. His ears rang and his vision blurred. Smoke filled the narrow corridor, and the smell of burning metal filled his nose. He grabbed his rifle and pulled himself to his feet. Around him, the other soldiers of his squad were doing the same. "Move, move, move!" shouted Corporal Lisa from somewhere ahead. Her voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Ran, his boots pounded against the metal floor as he followed the others deeper into the crashed vessel. The ship had come down hard on the surface of IV, a mining world that both humans and had been fighting over for months. The battle outside still raged, could hear the distant thunder of artillery and the sharp crack of pulse weapons. The war with the Dominion had lasted 8 years. 8 long years of blood and death across dozens of worlds. Had been fighting for 6 of those years. He had seen friends die. He had killed enemies he had never met. He had stopped asking why a long time ago. There were tall creatures, nearly 7 feet on average. They had smooth scales that changed color with their emotions, 4 arms, large dark eyes that seemed to look right through you. Humanity called them monsters. Humanity called them the enemy, had never really thought about what they called themselves. "Clear left!" shouted one of the soldiers. "Clear right!" shouted another. Moved through a doorway into what looked like a cargo hold. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Some were soldiers in their dark armor. Others were civilians in simple clothing. The crash had killed them all, felt nothing as he stepped over them. He had learned to feel nothing a long time ago. Lisa appeared beside him. Her face was covered in dust and there was blood on her forehead, but she seemed steady. She pointed toward the back of the cargo hold. "Check those compartments," she ordered. "Make sure nothing is alive back there." Nodded and moved forward. His rifle was raised and ready. His finger rested near the trigger. He had done this 100 times before. Clear the room, eliminate any threats, move on to the next room. Simple. He reached the first compartment and kicked the door open. Empty. He moved to the second, also empty. The third door was jammed, put his shoulder against it and pushed. The door gave way and he stumbled inside. The compartment was small, probably used for storage. Boxes and containers had been thrown everywhere by the crash. Scanned the room with his rifle. At first he saw nothing. Then he heard a sound. It was soft, almost too soft to hear. A small, frightened whimper. Froze, he knew that sound. He had heard it before, on other worlds, in other battles. It was the sound of a child trying not to be found. He lowered his rifle slightly and moved toward the sound. In the far corner, hidden behind a pile of broken containers, he saw something move. A small figure pressed against the wall, pushed the containers aside, and stopped breathing. It was a child. She was tiny, no bigger than a human toddler. Her scales were silver and they flickered with colors did not understand. Her large, dark eyes stared up at him with pure terror. She was covered in dust and there was dried blood on her arms, but it did not seem to be her own. Beside her lay the body of an adult female, clearly dead from the crash. The child opened her mouth and made a small chirping sound. Then she pressed herself harder against the wall, as if trying to disappear into it. Stood there for a long moment. His rifle felt heavy in his hands. Protocol was clear. Any survivors were to be reported and processed as prisoners of war. The child would be taken to a holding facility. She would be separated from everything she knew. She would become a number in a system that did not care about her. Thought about his own niece back on Earth. She was about the same size as this child. She had the same fear in her eyes when she woke from nightmares. He made his decision. Put down his rifle and slowly removed his jacket. The child watched him with wide eyes, her scales still flickering with fear colors. He moved slowly, carefully, showing her his empty hands. Then he wrapped his jacket around her small body and lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. She trembled against his chest like a small bird. "Hey," said softly. "Hey, it is okay. I am not going to hurt you." The child did not understand his words, but something in his voice must have reached her. She stopped trembling. Her scales slowly changed from fear colors to something calmer. She made another small chirping sound and pressed her face against his shoulder. Held her for a moment, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. He was going to break every rule. He was going to risk his career, maybe his freedom. He was going to save an enemy child. He did not care. He carried her out of the compartment and back into the cargo hold. Lisa was waiting for him. When she saw what he was carrying, her eyes went wide. "Cole, what the hell are you doing?" "I found her," said simply. "I am keeping her." Lisa looked at the child, then back at, her jaw tightened. Could see the conflict in her eyes. She was a good soldier. She knew the rules just as well as he did. "You know what will happen if Command finds out," she said quietly. "Yes." "You know you could go to prison for this." "Yes." Lisa stared at him for a long time. The battle continued to rage outside. Other soldiers were moving through the ship, calling out reports. Any moment, someone else might come into the cargo hold and see them. Finally, Lisa let out a long breath. She shook her head slowly. "I did not see anything," she said. "You hear me, Cole? I did not see a damn thing. Felt something loosen in his chest. Thank you." "Do not thank me. Just do not get caught." Nodded and moved past her toward the exit. The child in his arms had fallen asleep, exhausted from fear and shock. Her small hands gripped his shirt like she was afraid to let go. As he stepped out of the crashed ship and into the smoke-filled air of IV, looked down at the sleeping child. He did not know her name, he did not know anything about her, but he knew one thing for certain. He was going to protect her, no matter what. 3 weeks passed aboard the human destroyer Resolute Dawn. Cole had turned a forgotten storage room on the lower deck into a small home. He had found old blankets and made a bed in the corner. He had brought toys from the ship store, simple things meant for the children of officers. He had done everything he could to make the space feel safe. The child he had named was slowly learning to trust him. She had been terrified at first. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her hide. She would not eat. She would not sleep. She just sat in the corner with her scales flickering between fear colors and grief colors. Had stayed with her as much as he could. He talked to her even though she could not understand his words. He showed her pictures on his tablet. He played soft music. He sat with her in silence when she needed silence. Slowly, day by day, began to change. The first time she ate, almost cried. He had brought her some kind of protein paste that Dr. Ben Harper said might be safe for biology. She had looked at it for a long time, then carefully taken a small bite, then another, then another. When she finished, she looked up with her large, dark eyes and made a soft, chirping sound. Smiled. "Good girl." After that, things became easier. Started following around the small room. She started making sounds when he arrived and different sounds when he left. She started sleeping more peacefully, curled up in her blanket nest instead of pressed against the wall. Dr. Ben Harper became secret ally. Ben was a quiet man in his 40s with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been a doctor for 20 years and had seen too much death. When first brought to him, Ben had stared for a long moment. Then he had simply nodded and gotten to work. "She is malnourished," Ben said after examining her. "And she has some minor cuts that need treatment, but she is strong. She will survive." "Thank you," said. "I know this is dangerous for you." Ben shook his head. "She is a child. Whatever else is happening in this war, she is just a child. I did not become a doctor to let children suffer." The other person who helped was Amy Dalton, one of the ship cooks. Amy was a large woman with a loud laugh and a soft heart. When told her about, she did not ask questions. She just started researching nutrition and preparing small meals that could eat safely. "Poor little thing," Amy said the first time she saw. "She is so small. Are they always this small when they are young?" "I do not know," admitted. "I do not know anything about them really." Amy reached out slowly and touched his hand. Scales flickered with uncertainty, but she did not pull away. Amy smiled. "She likes me," Amy said proudly. "I can tell." The weeks turned into months, grew stronger. Her scales became brighter. She started making more complex sounds and began to recognize some of them as attempts at human words. "Nothin'," she would say when he entered the room, the sounds awkward on her tongue. "Nothin'." "That is right," would reply, kneeling down to her level. "That is my name." Would make a happy chirping sound and reach for him with her 4 small arms, would pick her up and hold her, marveling at how natural it felt. He had never planned to be a father. He had never thought he wanted children, but had changed something inside him. He taught her simple games. He showed her how to stack blocks and knock them down. He drew pictures for her on his tablet and watched her try to copy them with her clumsy fingers. He read to her from children's books stories about brave heroes and magical lands. She did not understand the words, but she loved the sound of his voice. The hardest part was keeping her hidden. Could only visit a few times a day between his duties. When he was gone, had to stay quiet and still. She seemed to understand this somehow. She would curl up in her blanket and wait patiently for his return, but knew the secret could not last forever. Captain Grant ran a tight ship. He knew everything that happened aboard the Resolute Dawn. It was only a matter of time before he discovered. That time came exactly 3 months after had found her. Was in the storage room teaching her a clapping game when the door suddenly opened. Captain Grant stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. Behind him stood 2 security officers with weapons ready. His heart stopped. He moved instinctively in front of, shielding her with his body. "Captain, I can explain," he started. Grant held up a hand. His eyes moved past to the small child peeking out from behind his legs. Scales were flickering with fear colors again. She made a small frightened sound and gripped pants with all 4 hands. For a long moment, no one spoke. The security officers waited for orders, waited for the end of everything he had built. Then Captain Grant did something unexpected. He sighed. It was a heavy sound, full of exhaustion and something else. Something that might have been sadness. "How long?" the captain asked quietly. "Swallowed. 3 months, sir." Grant nodded slowly. He looked at again. She was still hiding behind, but she had stopped making frightened sounds. Her scales were slowly calming. "She trusts you," Grant observed. "Yes, sir." "You know I should arrest you, court-martial you, throw you in a cell for the rest of the war." Felt his stomach drop. "Yes, sir, I know." Grant was silent for another long moment. The security officers shifted uncomfortably. They clearly had no idea what was happening. Then the captain turned to the officers. "False alarm," he said flatly. "There is nothing here. Return to your posts." The officers exchanged confused looks but did not argue. They saluted and left. Captain Grant stayed for a moment longer, looking at and, "I have been in this war too long," he said quietly. "I have seen too many terrible things. I have done too many terrible things." He paused. "But I am not going to be the man who punishes a soldier for showing mercy to a child." Felt tears forming in his eyes. He blinked them back. "Thank you, Captain. I do not know what to say." "Do not say anything. Just keep her hidden. And Cole." "Yes, sir." "If this goes wrong, I never knew about it. Understand?" Nodded. "Yes, sir, I understand." Grant turned and walked out of the room without looking back. The door closed behind him and was alone with once more. He sank to his knees and immediately climbed into his arms. She pressed her face against his chest and made soft sounds, held her tightly and let the tears fall. They were safe, for now, but knew that wars did not last forever. Eventually the fighting would end. Eventually someone would have to decide what happened too. He looked down at her sleeping face and made a silent promise. Whatever happened, he would find a way to protect her. She was his now, and he was never going to let her go. The news came on a Tuesday morning. Was in the mess hall eating breakfast when Captain Grant's voice came over the ship speakers. "Attention all hands. I have just received word from Earth Command. The war is over. I repeat, the war is over. A ceasefire has been signed. All combat operations are to stop immediately." The mess hall exploded with noise. Soldiers were shouting, laughing, crying. Some were hugging each other. Some were sitting in stunned silence. After 8 years of fighting, 8 years of death and destruction, it was finally over. Felt none of the joy around him. He felt only cold fear, because he knew what the ceasefire would mean. The peace agreement between humanity and the Dominion was complicated. There were territories to divide, resources to share, wounds to heal, but one part of the agreement was simple and clear. All prisoners and displaced persons were to be returned to their own people. Was a displaced person. Spent the next weeks desperately trying to find another way. He filled out forms, he made requests, he begged anyone who would listen. He wanted to adopt, he wanted to become her legal guardian, he wanted anything that would allow him to keep her. The answer was always no. "I am sorry, Sergeant Cole," said the military lawyer who reviewed his case. "But there is no legal way for a human to adopt a child. Our governments have no agreement for such things. The child must be returned to her people." "She is just a child," argued. "She does not care about governments or agreements. She just wants to stay with me." The lawyer shook his head sadly. "I understand your feelings, but the law is the law. The transfer is scheduled for next week." Walked out of the office, feeling like his heart had been ripped from his chest. He did not know how to tell. Over the past months she had learned more and more human words. She called him Papa now, a word she had picked up from one of the children books he read to her. She smiled when she saw him. She cried when he left. She had become his daughter in every way that mattered. How could he explain that she had to leave? How could he make her understand? The night before the transfer, sat with in their small room. She was drawing pictures on his tablet, her 4 small hands moving carefully across the screen. She had gotten much better at drawing. Her pictures now showed recognizable shapes, people and stars and ships. Said softly. She looked up at him with her large dark eyes. "Yes, Papa." Felt his throat tighten. Something is going to happen tomorrow, something that might be scary. Scales flickered with worry colors. "Scary? Why scary?" "Some people are coming, people like you. People, they want to take you home." Tilted her head. "Home, this is home, with Papa." "I know, sweetheart, I know. But they say you have to go with them. They say you have to live with your own people now." Scales turned the deep blue of grief. She dropped the tablet and climbed into his lap, wrapping all 4 arms around him as tightly as she could. "No," she said firmly. "No go, stay with Papa, stay here." Held her and felt tears running down his face. "I do not want you to go either. I love you so much." "Then no go," insisted. "Papa says stay, stays." I wish it was that simple. I wish I could just say stay and make it happen. But I cannot. The people in charge say you have to go. Was crying now too, her tears different from human tears, more like small drops of silver light. "Papa come too, Papa come with." Shook his head. "I cannot, they would not let me. I am human. We are not supposed to be family." "But we are family," said her voice breaking. "Papa is family. Papa found, Papa kept safe. Papa loves." "Yes," whispered. "Yes, I do, more than anything." They held each other all night. Neither of them slept. They just sat together in the darkness, sharing what might be their last hours as a family. The morning came too soon. Soldiers arrived at the door to escort and to the transfer point. They walked through the corridors of the Resolute Dawn, past crew members who watched with sad eyes. Word had spread about and his daughter. Most people did not understand it, but some did. Some looked at him with respect, with sympathy, with something like admiration. Lisa was waiting at the airlock. She stepped forward and put a hand on shoulder. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I really am." Nodded. He could not speak. Dr. Ben Harper was there too, and Amy Dalton. They both hugged gently and whispered goodbye. Amy was crying openly. Ben's eyes were wet, but he kept his composure. "She is a special girl," Ben said too. "You did a good thing, saving her, never forget that." Tried to smile, but could not manage it. The airlock opened, revealing a corridor that connected to a vessel. Several officials stood waiting. Their scales were calm, neutral colors. They looked at, and with expressions he could not read, pressed herself against legs and refused to move. Her scales were flickering between fear and grief and something that looked like anger. "No," she said loudly. "No go, stay with Papa." One of the officials stepped forward. It spoke in heavily accented but understandable English. "The child must come with us. This is the agreement." "I know," said. His voice was hoarse. "Just give me a moment, please." He knelt down in front of and took her face in his hands. Her silver scales were warm against his palms. Her dark eyes looked into his with desperate hope. "Listen to me," said. "I need you to be brave. I need you to go with these people, but I want you to remember something. I love you. I will always love you, and I will never stop trying to find a way back to you. Do you understand?" His tears were flowing freely now. "Promise?" "I promise, with all my heart. I will find you again. I do not know how, I do not know when, but I will never give up." Threw her arms around his neck and held him tightly. held her back, memorizing the feeling of her small body against his. Then, slowly, he let go. He stood up and gently pushed toward the officials. She went reluctantly, looking back at him with every step. The officials took her hands and began leading her away. At the entrance to the vessel, stopped and turned around one last time. "Love you, Papa," she called out. Raised his hand. "I love you too, always." Then she was gone, and Cole stood alone in the empty corridor, feeling like he had lost everything that mattered. Had not moved from the corridor. He stood frozen, staring at the place where had disappeared. His heart felt like a stone in his chest. His eyes were dry because he had no tears left to cry. Lisa stood nearby, unsure what to say. Dr. Ben Harper and Amy Dalton waited in silence. Even the soldiers who had escorted them looked uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. The door to the vessel opened again. A group came through, but these were different from the officials who had taken. These wore elaborate robes with golden markings. Their scales were decorated with patterns that seemed to glow. They moved with the grace of people who were used to power and respect. At the front of the group was a female. She was tall, even for her kind, and her scales were a deep silver that reminded of. Golden markings covered her face and arms, signs of nobility according to the little new of culture. She stopped when she saw, her dark eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him take a step back. Behind her, a smaller figure pushed through the crowd of officials. It was. She broke free from the people holding her and ran straight toward. "Papa," she cried, her voice echoing through the corridor. "Papa, Papa!" Dropped to his knees and caught her in his arms. She was trembling violently, her scales flickering so fast they almost seemed to blur. He held her tightly and whispered calming words, even though his own heart was pounding. The noble female had stopped a few feet away. She was staring with an expression that could not understand at first. Then he saw her scales change color. They shifted to the deep blue of grief, the same color showed when she was sad. "She is alive," the female whispered in. The translator device around her neck converted her words to English. "My child is alive." Felt a chill run down his spine. He looked from the noble female to and back again. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same silver scales, the same dark eyes, the same graceful way of moving. This was his mother. "You are the human," the female said, her eyes turning too. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You are the one who took my daughter." His arms tightened around. "I saved her. She would have died if I had left her." "Yes, they told me how you found her in the wreckage, how you hid her for months, how you raised her as your own child." The female's scales flickered with emotions could not identify. "They told me you called her. It was just a sound she made. I did not know her real name. Her name is, I am her mother. I am a high counselor of the Dominion." Felt his stomach drop. A high counselor, one of the leaders of the government. He had accidentally adopted the child of one of the most powerful people in the enemy empire. "I thought she was dead," continued. Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion breaking through her cold exterior. "When the transport crashed, we found no survivors. I mourned her for a year. I performed the rituals. I said goodbye." She stepped closer, her 4 hands clasped together in front of her. Her scales were shifting between grief and something else, something that might have been wonder. "And now I find her alive, speaking human words, calling a human soldier her papa." "I am sorry," said. He was not sure what he was apologizing for. "I never meant to take her from you. I just wanted to keep her safe." Studied him for a long moment, had turned in his arms and was watching her biological mother with uncertain eyes. She clearly had no memory of. To her, this was a stranger. "You protected her," said slowly. "You risked your freedom, your career, perhaps your life. You raised her with kindness when you could have handed her over to your government as a prisoner. Why?" Thought about the question. It was something he had asked himself many times. "Because she was a child," he finally said. "Because she was scared and alone and she needed someone to take care of her. Because when I looked at her, I did not see an enemy. I just saw a little girl who needed help." Was silent. The other nobles behind her were whispering to each other, their scales showing various shades of surprise and confusion. Then did something that shocked everyone. She knelt down. A high counselor of the Dominion, one of the most powerful beings in her civilization, knelt on the floor of a human warship and bowed her head. "Among my people," she said quietly, "there is a sacred law. It is older than our empire, older than our written history. When a person saves a child from mortal danger, when they protect that child and raise them as their own, they become bound to that child forever. They become the child's guardian, their protector, their family." She looked up at, her dark eyes filled with something he had never expected to see from her: respect, gratitude, hope. "By our oldest and most sacred law, you are guardian. You are her second parent. You are part of our family now." Stared at her, he could not process what he was hearing. "What does that mean?" Stood up and turned to face the human officials who had gathered in the corridor. Captain Grant was among them now, along with several diplomats who had rushed over when they heard about the commotion. "It means," said in a voice that carried through the entire corridor, "that I am not taking my daughter away from her guardian. I am demanding that her guardian come with us. I am demanding that humanity release Cole to the Dominion so that he can take his rightful place as father." The corridor erupted in chaos. The human diplomats were shouting protests. The nobles were arguing among themselves. Soldiers were gripping their weapons nervously. But heard none of it. He looked down at, who was looking up at him with hope in her eyes. "Papa come," she asked. "Papa come with—" Felt something break open inside his chest. It was not pain this time. It was joy. "Maybe," he whispered, "maybe I can." Had moved to stand beside them. She looked at and together, and her scales slowly shifted to a warm golden color that had never seen before. "I lost my daughter once," said softly. "I will not lose her again, and I will not separate her from the man she loves as a father. Whatever it takes, whatever agreements must be made, I will make this happen." She extended one of her 4 hands toward. It was a gesture of partnership, of trust, of welcome. "Will you accept your role as her guardian?" asked. "Will you accept your place in our family?" Looked at her hand, he looked at, he thought about everything he would be leaving behind. His home, his people, his entire world. Then he thought about Smile, her laugh, the way she called him Papa. He reached out and took's hand. "Yes," he said, "I will." The negotiations lasted for 6 weeks, had never seen so many politicians, diplomats, and lawyers gathered in one place. Humans and argued day and night about rules and precedents and treaties. The media on both sides went wild with the story. A human soldier who saved an alien child, an alien mother who demanded he become part of her family. It was the kind of story that could change everything. Not everyone was happy about it. On the human side, some people called a traitor. They said he had betrayed his species by caring for an enemy child. They said he was abandoning humanity by agreeing to live in the Dominion. There were protests outside the building where the negotiations were happening. There were angry messages flooding the networks. But there were also messages of support. Thousands of them, millions of them, ordinary people who saw the images of holding and felt something stir in their hearts. Veterans who understood that enemies were not always monsters. Parents who knew they would do the same thing to protect any child. On the side, the reaction was equally mixed. Many thought it was wrong to honor a human with such a sacred status. They said the old laws were never meant to apply to aliens. They said was making a mistake that would shame her family. But stood firm. "The law does not care about species," she declared to the High Council. "It cares about actions. Cole acted with honor. He protected my daughter when no one else could. He earned his place in my family, and I will not deny him that place because of fear and prejudice." The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they agreed. The law was the law. Cole would be recognized as guardian under tradition. Now, they just needed humanity to agree. Sat through countless meetings where he was asked the same questions over and over. "Are you sure about this? Do you understand what you are giving up? Do you know you might never be able to return to human space?" His answer was always the same. "I am sure. Is my daughter. I belong with her." Finally, after weeks of negotiation, a compromise was reached. Would be granted dual citizenship, the first human in history to hold such a status. He would live on the Asgardian, but he would also serve as a cultural ambassador between the two species. He could visit human space whenever he wished. He could maintain contact with his family and friends on Earth. It was not perfect, nothing ever was, but it was enough. On the day was scheduled to leave a crowd had gathered at the departure point. Lisa was there, dressed in civilian clothes for the first time since had known her. She smiled when she saw him, though her eyes were wet. "So this is really happening," she said. Nodded. "This is really happening." Lisa shook her head slowly. "You know, when you carried that little girl out of that crashed ship, I thought you had lost your mind. I thought you were going to ruin your life for nothing. And now," Lisa laughed, "now I think you might be the person I have ever met, or the craziest. I still have not decided which." She stepped forward and hugged him tightly, hugged her back. "Take care of yourself out there," Lisa whispered, "and take care of that little girl." "I will, I promise." Dr. Ben Harper was next. He shook his hand firmly and looked him in the eye. "You changed something," Ben said, "something important. This whole thing, this story about a human soldier and an alien child, it is making people think differently about making them see that maybe we are not so different after all." Had not thought about it that way. He had just been trying to protect one little girl, but Ben was right. The story had spread across both civilizations. People were talking. People were questioning the hatred they had felt for so long. Maybe that was worth something. Amy Dalton gave a basket of food she had prepared for the journey. She was crying too much to say anything, so she just hugged him and patted his cheek and made him promise to eat properly. Captain Grant was the last to approach. He stood stiffly, as he always did, but there was something different in his eyes, something softer. "Sergeant Cole," he said formally, "or should I say Ambassador Cole?" Smiled. "Is fine, sir." Grant nodded. He seemed to struggle with his words for a moment. "I have served in the military for 30 years. I have fought in 3 wars. I have seen the best and worst of what humans can do." He paused. "What you did, saving that child, raising her, refusing to give her up even when it cost you everything, that was the best of us. That was what humanity should be." Felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, Captain. That means more than you know." Grant extended his hand, shook it. "Good luck out there," Grant said. "Make us proud." Then it was time to go. Walked toward the ship with holding one of his hands. Walked on the other side, one of her hands resting gently on shoulder. They looked like a family. They were a family. At the entrance to the ship, paused and looked back one last time. He saw the crowd of humans watching him. He saw Lisa wiping her eyes. He saw Ben nodding encouragingly. He saw Amy waving her hands. This was his home. These were his people. But his family was going somewhere else. Turned and walked onto the ship. The journey took 2 weeks. Spent most of it learning about his new home, taught him about culture, their history, their customs. She taught him their language, which was surprisingly musical and beautiful. Helped, correcting his pronunciation with the brutal honesty that only a child could have. When they finally arrived, stepped off the ship and saw for the first time, it was beautiful. The sky was a deep purple and filled with countless moons. The buildings were tall and elegant, made of materials that seemed to glow from within. Strange flowers bloomed everywhere, filling the air with sweet scents. It was alien, it was strange, it was nothing like Earth. And yet, as grabbed his hand and pulled him forward, chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to show him, realized something important. Home was not a place. Home was not a planet or a city or a building. Home was where your family was. And his family was right here. In the years that followed, Cole became something no human had ever been before. He became a bridge between 2 worlds. He helped humans understand each other. He helped turn a ceasefire into a true peace. He helped build a future where their children might never know war. But most importantly, he raised his daughter. He watched grow from a frightened child into a confident young woman. He taught her about human culture and learned about culture in return. He celebrated her achievements and comforted her through her failures. He loved her more than he had ever loved anything in his life. And sometimes, late at night, when was asleep and the purple moons filled the sky with silver light, would think about that crashed ship on IV. He would think about the moment he found a terrified alien child hiding in the wreckage. He had made a choice that day, a choice that changed everything. He had protected the enemy's child, and in doing so, he had found his purpose, his family, and his home. Cole smiled and closed his eyes. He had no regrets, not a single one.